Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Calm Mind Podcast. I'm your host, Ron, and joining me on this journey is my fellow Pokemon YouTuber and co-host, Toby. How's it going, Toby?
Hey, Ron, it's all going well. I'm having a lovely day, and I'm excited. I got a lot to share with you this week. How are things on your end?
Good. Once again, we barely got to talk during the week, so this is us literally catching up once again. I am very interested in asking you a bunch of questions based on what you tweeted like a few days ago.
Yeah. I had a very lively week on Twitter this week. It went very personal.
So, I mean, you basically tweeted that you, re-identify as autistic? I don't know how that works.
Yeah, no, I mean, this is kind of a weird one. When I was a kid, and in school, I had a lot of learning difficulties, and I got what's called a statement of educational needs, which my mum fought tooth and nail for me to be assessed. We had people come to the school and kind of look at me interacting with other kids and interacting with the teachers and like how I wrote and all of that stuff. Proper like X-Men study type stuff, except I didn't have cool superpowers. I was just on the autistic spectrum. And at the time, in 2006, 2007, whenever I was 13, I don't know. Whenever I was in school, they put me on Asperger's, they called it, which is a term that over the years has fallen out of use, as has high functioning. I've also learned is like high functioning, lower functioning is like it's a really unpopular thing within the autistic community, because some people, for example, can be high functioning at some part of the day, but maybe at the other part of the day they're really struggling to function and still have those needs. My main thing was just that I found socializing really difficult. I found emotional cues quite difficult, and I found this is part of the, when you say re-identify, is kind of an interesting thing, because I've definitely not identified with my autism much across my adult life, because around about age 16, I felt that I started to cue into those things quite well.
Well, was that like you just learning, or was that natural to you?
I honestly don't know. I think it was natural. But I definitely have felt... I felt this kind of high-functioning label that they gave me, and that I feel that I've been a productive member of society, and I'm also, I'm self-employed doing the YouTube thing, much like yourself, and I've got a lot of control over my own life. And so to label, even though I've been medically labeled, to kind of think of myself as autistic has always kind of been an odd thing, because I feel like it's not had a huge negative impact on my life, and actually if it's had any kind of impact, it's only been positive. So that's kind of the odd thing. I've had a, I guess, fraught relationship with the word autism. I don't know where I sit within that. I know that I am that for sure. There's so many characteristics I can identify that I'm like, yep, that is very clearly as a result of that.
Like what? Because I don't know what you feel.
I am like not routine oriented in the way that I think media would depict autistic people, and that like if you break my routine, that's it. But like I live and die by my to-do list, and I can rearrange my to-do list, but once it's on the to-do list, it's how I function day to day, and that's just one of many. I'm an odd. I'm an odd.
Well, here's how I think this conversation is going to go, where I'm going to be asking a lot of questions, because your how you identify as autistic is not based on whatever stereotypes or knowledge that I have of autism. Because, like, for example, you say you live by your schedule or whatever, but like I know people who are definitely not autistic and are, for example, my brother has OCD. And it's like, that's even, he probably is worse than you in that aspect, for example.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean he has autism, or me too. Like, so, a lot of people with anxiety disorders in general would have that as well. So
can I start off with a question for you, which is, what do you know about autism, and what does that kind of word and term mean to you? So
originally it was more the social cues was the big thing. But then as I learned more, it seems like the common thing is actually sensory. Like,
sure.
No matter how high, how functioning you are with your autism, you still have like sensory differences than the normal non-neurodivergent person has. But again, even neurodivergent means a billion things. We're going to talk about the term neurodivergent, because it seems like everybody's neurodivergent now, like including me, based on at least a term, because when you Google it and you see like charts of anybody who falls under neurodivergent, you'll be like people with anxiety disorders, or like but I see it as people with like autism, but then also like ADHD, things that like either you're born with or like things that like actually limit your function, I guess, in normal society.
Yeah, so I'm like really I'm really open to learning on all this because of my distance relationship with the labels. But I really like the term neurodivergent. However, on a like very straightforward sense, everyone is neurodivergent because everyone's brain is diverging from each other. Everyone thinks differently.
I mean, there's always a norm, there's an average. It's like a very neutral term, which is good. Like, it just describes the thing. But, like, I don't know why you would choose to use neurodivergent. I may be wrong, but, like, wouldn't you just want to use the actual term of whatever disorder or thing that you have instead of just neurodivergent? Unless you're trying to neutralize make it not sound too bad or...
But I think, so for... You mentioned the sensory thing, for example. Now, that is when I was younger. I definitely, if things were too loud, it would really bother. It would bother me greatly. I don't have that anymore. And
can you grow out of autism? Is that
the honest answer is I don't know. I don't know. Can you grow out of this trait or into this trait? If anyone's listening to this, by the way, and you're able to communicate with us either on the YouTube comments or on our socials, I am so open to learning on this subject because I know it is. I feel that it is a part of me. I feel that I think in a way and behave in a way that is different to most of the people that I know. I do find commonalities with a lot of other people. And interestingly enough, usually the people I find commonalities with are people who say, hey, I think I might be autistic or I've been diagnosed with autism. So I know there's something there. And medically, I've been diagnosed as a kid. There is something there. So But I find myself at age 27, having not really thought about it much over the last decade, trying to I don't want to box myself or label, like pigeonhole myself or anything like that, but trying to really understand what that means for me going forward, if anything at all. But it's just got me curious because it's Autism Awareness Month as we're recording this, and the day that I was tweeting out was Autism Awareness Day, and there's just these little things that I do, behaviors, whether it's the list, for example, or whether it's sometimes when being met with a problem, like an emotional problem, like maybe a friend's got relationship advice or whatever, I approach it in this almost sort of seemingly emotionless, robotic way, like, well, if you want result X, you do Y, whatever, and it feels to fall in that same umbrella.
But on the other hand, you're even more social than the average person and understand social cues. I feel like even more than me. Like, at least based on our conversations and how I've seen you interact with our friends, it's like, you know how to, again, it may be learnt or something, but like, you just know how to respond to people.
It could be. I found, but it could have come from, because this development happened for me really between the ages of 14 and 18. Yeah. And at that time, I was very involved with drama at school. And that the whole thing with drama is being empathetic and
you're way
learning
more
emotion is like at the core of that. So maybe that's where I've managed to find it. I do remember all sorts of scenarios with my mum where we'd be out and about and I'd say something or do something inappropriate or inconsiderate, and mum would sort of go, don't you say please, you say thank you here. No, you can't say that, you're in public, like these things. And so there was definitely a little bit of parental training on that I remember. But
again, these questions that I'm going to have, it's not like me like invalidating whatever experience you have or anything. It's literally just, I'm trying to find like the common denominator with autistic people. I'm trying to like, what is the thing that makes you autistic? Because everything you've told me or will tell me, it kind of seems like things that just any average person could have, including me. Like, and to an extreme or to a lesser extreme, it's like, what would you say is the thing that you think I don't have? Because it seems like everything you're saying I can have.
Maybe you're autistic.
But that's the thing.
know.
It's like, we shouldn't be like going around and be like, oh, if you have all these, you're autistic. It's like, it really does seem, at least from when I'm talking to actual autistic people, I guess including you, is the sensory things. Like it's or the. But again, like for example, my sister, she cannot process loud noises, including my mother, I guess too. But like they're not autistic. So
this is the interesting. I mean, I might even be the wrong person to ask about this, just in that even though I know, I believe, based on the fact that I was medically diagnosed when I was a kid, that I am autistic. However, like I say, one of the reasons I've had such a distant relationship from the term over the last decade is I've had a very successful start to my life, which I'm very incredibly grateful for, that I've worked for, and that because it's addressed as a disorder or a disability, and I haven't felt particularly hindered by it, I felt that distance from the term. And then also because the terms that I were diagnosed with, Asperger's and high functioning, are terms that have fallen out of fashion in the last decade. I'm now like, okay, so where do I sit on that? I wonder if I went to get assessed, today, would I still be diagnosed? I just don't know,
Because, for example, like a disorder is a thing that actually negatively affects your life. It won't be a disorder unless it affects your day-to-day life in a negative way. So, although autism, is it a disorder? What is it?
I think it's a disorder, but again, I'm not sure. Sorry, I'm not. I definitely don't want to come on as the paragon.
It's actually fun to talk to you about because it's so grey. If it's just a person who's educated in the subject, they'll just give me the answers, and that's it. That's the end of the conversation.
Journey. Yeah,
we're gonna maybe discover through multiple episodes of this podcast what you.
We'll go on this journey together.
Exactly.
But thank you for asking about it, because I don't really have this conversation with anyone, even in my day-to-day life, because there's no one really to talk about it with, and so I sort of just end up not ever digging into it. Though I'm not gonna like out anyone, but like I have conversations with all sorts of Pokemon YouTubers.
Yeah.
And there is definitely something within the realm of Pokemon that attracts an autistic mindset, without question, and not just the YouTubers who have told me, but also like viewers all the time. When I messaged out and said on Twitter, I'm definitely on the spectrum, I was not surprised at the slew of responses saying, "Hey, me as well,"
Well, I think first there can be many factors. I agree that a lot of autistic people enjoy Pokemon. First, I mean, it is Pokemon. It's the biggest franchise, so you're going to see the most representation of anything. But also, in general, also the people who are most passionate in a fandom can be autistic and will be the one who reach out to you. For example, I'd say autistic people are overrepresented in the people who are my patrons, who are like people who actually like actively support me.
I see what you're saying.
A lot of them are autistic. It's even more interesting because it is you. And I think I would assume whenever you tell your friends and family that you're autistic, or the people who don't know, they would be surprised and they would be even more interested in knowing about the subject, because like if Toby's autistic, anybody can be autistic. It's not your job to find out more just for that sake, but it's like.
But do you know what? I do want to find out more, and maybe I'll tell you what. Maybe, and this is something we've even talked about in relation to this podcast, is I struggle with really engaging and being in the moment, and like I want to ask you questions, right?
Yeah.
I want to ask you questions about things as we talk through the podcast. And in discussions, I can often finding myself, which makes me a terrible podcast co-host, waiting for my turn to talk, which is like, I think that stems from that as well. And I find that while I might seem on the surface like I'm asking, like, oh, yeah, Toby's, like engaging and stuff, which I am. I'm really trying to engage.
Yeah.
That maybe I seem like I'm... That maybe I know that secretly, gosh, I'm a terrible listener.
Honestly, you've been, even in the last episode, you've been responding perfectly. It's more like, for example, even someone who isn't autistic and who has a different disorder, for example, I have social anxiety disorder, I still I have the exact same, I guess, problem where it's like, because of my social anxiety, I am thinking a lot about how am I going to respond to what he's saying? Oh, I don't want there to be a lull in the conversation. I don't want there to be a pause. So, let me quickly make sure I can find a response. And because of that, I'm not listening to you because I'm thinking of my own response. Not because I want to respond, not because I'm passionate. Maybe that's what yours stems from, like what your problem stems from. But for me, it's the opposite, where it's like, not because I'm passionate, it's because I want the other person to not feel awkward. So I really want to say something to respond to what they're saying. But then that backfires a lot.
Maybe you and we should both take some time to like investigate it more, and we can report back with our findings, and see what there's a lot of overlap. OCD, ADHD, ADD, Asperger's, autism, dyslexia, dyspraxia. There's so much crossover in these areas. It's kind of wild.
What's funny is that a lot of people, like, when I just found out about social anxiety and my own social anxiety, I thought that autism was close to it, but in the end it's kind of almost the opposite, at least in my mind, where it's like, it's not like not picking up social cues, it's picking up every social cue and not knowing which one is the one, where it's like, I mean, you obviously know which one is like the reality, especially if you have therapy.
You learn to decipher what is your perception of reality and what is actually reality.
how do you delineate between, because you say obviously you go therapy and then you know which one's the logically the correct thing. So when there's a social cue, like I've said something in a way and you're like, oh, I think Toby meant that as a joke, but actually I'm worried that maybe he doesn't like me or that there's something like that or whatever. How do you, because obviously you've got to deal with that conversation by conversation as you're going. Yes. How do you delineate which is the kind of the correct one?
Well, in therapy, you're basically relaying to your therapist all the different times that you're socially anxious throughout the week. And then she'll like guide me through what she thinks the other person was thinking. And then like I'll agree after disagreeing for like 20 minutes and be like, nah, but maybe they meant this. And she's like, nah, they meant this. That's normal. And then I'll be like, okay, you're right. And then through all these experiences, I guess I learn that just to trust reality and not listen to myself, I guess, too much. Because I know reality. It's not like I have a problem not perceiving it. It's that it's clouded by all my thoughts, I guess.
So now you know that I do in fact hate you and that
exactly
that I was never joking.
This is the last podcast. The problem is just because it's still you still have social anxiety disorder. Even after 3 years of therapy, it's like it's still a problem. But especially with the pandemic, where it's like the number one way to cure or to get better with social anxiety is by socializing, and that's a problem during the pandemic. So my social anxiety got way better over the year before the pandemic, but then the pandemic struck and then it stagnated, and it sucks. It sucks when you're like improving and then all of a sudden you can't improve in your disorder. Hopefully it's getting better, especially with this podcast again. Talking with someone is important for healing.
This is already, and you know, we're only on really week 2 of this, but this has already been a really nice outlet to just like chat and catch up in the week, and also nice to dedicate some time to each other because, like,
definitely,
I like hanging out and catching up with you, man.
Every week there's a thing. There are things that I wanted to ask you, but it's always way more pleasant to ask you in person and to actually. I hate just texting things that I actually really want to hear.
Well, I got a big update that I want to talk to you about. I didn't know if you had any more questions about that. If not, I'm going to drop this on you. All right.
I'll bring it up in the future again, though.
Cool. So I've watched all of Arcane this week. All of it. It is so good. And look, we're not going to make this an Arcane podcast or anything, but I just got to go watch it. Everyone needs to go watch it. It's fantastic. These characters are so well written. I almost gave it away because as we started recording, I was humming the Imagine Dragons song, and I was like, no, stop, don't hum, because it's on loop in my head right now. Thank you for recommending this show to me. Oh my goodness.
You're welcome. Yeah, it's definitely a show that you would love. Dude, so I think I was hooked after episode 3.
Yeah.
Just like everybody else. I cried during the ending of episode 3 because the acting was so good. Probably some of the best voice acting I've ever seen from a person that is younger than 18. It was so emotional, and yeah, once you cry to a show, you're hooked.
They got you. It's a real the thing that impressed me about it. The first thing I realized impressed me about it, because we got to the end of episode 1 and I sort of went, okay, you know, it's nothing special. It's this dystopian future resistance fighting against the corporate machine. Okay, cool. I've kind of seen this before, you know.
And neither of us are League of Legends fans.
Yeah, no, I know nothing about League of Legends. But what I found, what really impressed me is as soon as we got into episode 2 and then episode 3 especially, and then every episode following that, was the show's ability to subvert expectations. And I'm going to recommend to anyone who wants to watch this show, watch the first 2 episodes. Don't watch the first one on its own, because the one on its own is still a fantastic episode, but I don't think it really gives you a feel for what the whole show is going to be. But by the second one, there's that subversion of expectation, and every time you think you know where it's going. That was my experience, at least. I don't know, when did you watch it and what was yours like?
So there are 9 episodes, right? And each 3 episodes are basically like a part, an act. So I would recommend, I'd say 3 episodes at once. Don't watch episode 3 and then watch episode 4 after. You need some time to like think and digest. Also it's just also the way the show is structured. Episode 3 and 4 should be separate. You'd enjoy it way more coming back to episode 4 because it's like a whole new perspective on the show. One of the coolest settings, or at least the execution, the art, the background work, the animation is all perfect. It's one of the best animated shows of all time.
There's no other way to say it. There's a sex scene in it. So there you go. There's your reason to go watch it. But it's beautiful, right? It takes the editing and the fact that it's an animation and uses the medium to its advantage, and I love when projects do that, when shows take the format that they're in. You couldn't take a show like Arcane and just recast it with real life people. Wouldn't work. No world. The editing is and the animation is such a fundamental part to it. And the sex scene is just the example that pops to mind. There are so many examples throughout the show where the way that the scenes are edited together and blended.
The last scene, for example, the last scene cannot be done in live action. The last shot, it's so artistic and beautiful. And let's talk about Mel for a second. Probably the best looking fictional character of all time, Mel. I cannot think. They literally sculpted a goddess. Really good looking characters, yes.
Well, all of the characters are very attractive. I did think, even the guy characters, even the robot characters, I'm like, whoa, these are great. But what my favorite character initially, actually, is she appears in the very first episode, is the sort of chief of police of the enforcers. Yeah. And there's this beautiful relationship, not like a romantic relationship or anything, just like a great dynamic between her and one of the characters in the Undercity, and I really don't want to say because I don't want to spoil, but a
lot of great characters.
Interesting.
A lot of characters, their alignment doesn't mean their actual morality. Even the villains act like normal people. I love it.
Everyone's written with such depth, and I'm just oh man, I'm so stoked on this show, and I'm like, I need more. I can't wait for more.
And the voice acting is really good. Like, for example, the character that you were talking about, her voice is so good.
I just want to listen to it for hours.
Well, I think season 2 is going to come out in like 5 years or something, because it took like 5 years to make season 1.
Oh, gutting.
Definitely something to look forward to. Although they have all the assets now and all the actors, so maybe it'll take 2-3 years maximum.
We had a very different journey with the show, though, because obviously you watched the show as intended.
Yeah.
I don't know if I mentioned this, but I had seen the final scene before watching the show, but purely by accident. It was entirely by accident, and I had, because I wasn't interested in League of Legends, I thought, I'm never going to watch this show, and I walked in and Phoebe was watching it, and she was sort of in tears watching the final sequence, and I went, wow, that looked amazing. And she went, you've been stood there the whole time. And so I kind of was watching it with, I assume, a slightly different lens than a lot of people, because she was saying, please don't think about the ending. And of course, between every episode, it was like, so how do we get from here to there?
Interesting.
And but that didn't ruin it at all. I still obviously had an amazing time.
Jinx is a very famous just video game character, so I knew about Jinx before. That didn't affect my experience at all. You would enjoy it even more if you're blind, because if you play the game, you know all the characters, where they end up and stuff like that. I did a dumb thing and looked up a lot of these because I enjoyed the show so much. I'm like, oh, hey, what are these characters in the game? And it's like, oh, now I kind of spoiled myself in terms of how they end up and who they are.
Who's your favorite character in the show then? Is it Mel?
I guess my favorite character probably Vi. Oh wait, what's the time guy's name? Echo.
Oh yeah.
Echo is one of the coolest characters ever. I love Echo. You remember Echo?
I do remember Echo, although I was frustrated because I didn't know who it was at first, and then it took a conversation with Phoebe where we had to pause it, and she sort of went, it's that character. Oh, okay, right, I see. Yeah, Echo was great. I feel that there is a lot of setup for minor characters to take on really big roles later down the line.
If you're a normal adult, you'll enjoy that show. Unless you really hate animation, and that's your fault, man. You gotta you gotta educate yourself if you think animation is not a good medium. So I'm very glad that you watched Arcane.
Loved it. Thank you again.
This makes me confident that you'll also enjoy, like, for example, Fullmetal Alchemist and stuff like that, and all the other shows that I've recommended.
Yeah, that's the next one, isn't it?
I think it's time to get to our main segment of the podcast, which is randomly generating Pokemon.
Okay.
And we'll do that after I go to the bathroom. Why was there rice in my underwear?
Because you ate it and did not digest it, so you pooped it straight through as pure rice.
It was very clean.
It's very clean. It just went, it literally like you have a hollow hole the whole way down.
All right, we're generating a Pokemon. Let's go.
Yeah, let's do it.
And the Pokemon we have today, Makuhita.
Interesting.
So, what's interesting about me is that about Makuhita is that like I always think of Hariyama is such an iconic Pokemon in Generation 3 because it looks so distorted. In the game, it looks like a huge, like it's huge, the sprite and like just the way it moves, for example, like whenever it does like smelling salts, that's such like a unique like animation. It looks uncanny, honestly. It looks kind of creepy sometimes in the game.
It was like one of my OGs
Really?
for my first Sapphire team, I think. But I agree, like uncanny that it's that line where I think it's not as humanoid as like maybe Hitmonchan.
Yeah.
But it's just Pokemon enough so that it's clearly a creature, but it's got those humanoid like aspects.
Like
that
it has
kind of
human ears,
weird.
dude. The human ears are like
Yeah.
probably the most humanoid ears I've seen in a Pokemon, and like if it had a mouth, that's it. It's a human. Like
Yeah.
So, but it works. It totally works. I never like thought it was a bad design or anything. But let's talk about Makuhita itself. So its origin is very Japanese. It's the family is based on like famous like sumo wrestlers, right? And
Okay.
people that we do not know.
Yeah, I know nothing about its origins, to be honest.
Makuhita, what's funny is that it literally has the same exact color scheme as a Pikachu. I don't
It
know.
does.
That may have been like the precursor to like Mimikyu. Like maybe he was designed as like a Pikachu-esque kind of looking character because it's like
I've
a punching
never
bag,
thought about that.
like a punching
I've
bag
never
of a
thought
Pikachu.
about that. That's genius. You're right. Makuhita is literally yellow, small, chubby thing with red cheek circles and pointed things on its head that could resemble ears and black tips. This is Pikachu, and I've never thought about that before.
Again, I think it really looks. It's like a punching bag Pikachu.
That's so interesting. I'd never thought about that. Makuhita is a Pokemon I actually like. I think Hariyama is quite iconic. I forget about the pre-evolution quite a lot, I think.
Hariyama seems like a Pokemon that they would have given to like a final boss in the game, but like no famous trainer has a Hariyama, at least maybe in the post game of Emerald for like Brawly, but like Hariyama is like a Pokemon you see in like a final gym leader. He's a very intimidating guy.
I also have strong memories of Colosseum because I think it's the first shadow Pokemon you get to encounter is Makuhita, and so I got strong imagery of that Makuhita kind of punching, and then you see the character react as if they've just been attacked by the shadow Pokemon, and it's
Have you ever had any interest in like boxing or wrestling?
No. Well, actually, no, that's not true. I did when I was a kid. I did a couple classes of some kind of martial art. I think I gave up within 3 sessions. It wasn't for me. There was a period when I was very young where I took a stab at a lot of things. There was ballet, there was gymnastics, but I think I just wanted to stay at home. I mean, what about you?
So both my siblings took Taekwondo for like a year. Like they did not stick with it, but like I would be in their practices. I'd say like 60% of the time. So I think I learned everything that they learned because like they would also practice it at home, and I would like mimic them sometimes. Yeah, I was not the type to do any sports at all. I was always picked last in gym and stuff like that. And I never felt bad about that because like I clearly am not a sports guy. And I also did not enjoy, for example, basketball. I'm scared of the basket. I was scared of the ball. It's a hard ball, and like whenever like it hits the rim and comes back, I'm like I never want to touch it because it's like moving at a speed that could. It actually not broke my finger. What's below breaking? Sprained?
Fractured?
No, that's fracture's worse than breaking.
Is it? Wait, really? I don't know.
Wait. What's the one where it's like shattered? I guess that's shattering.
I guess. Yeah.
Fracture. I don't know. Is fracture worse than or what?
I think a fracture is lighter than a break. I think if I fracture
A fracture
my
just
arm,
like it's just like a line. I guess.
yeah, but like a break implies that it's like it's done. It's out of here.
But
It
there's
ain't coming
one
back.
thing above a break, but I guess that's shatter. That makes sense.
Yes, I guess so. I guess if I shattered my leg, that would be worse than a break.
It was where the ball hit my middle finger as I was trying to catch it, and it just became all black and blue. It didn't break or anything, but I had to wear a splint, stuff like that.
Oh, I feel that.
And ever
Was
since
that,
then, I just don't catch a basketball.
Is that like the worst injury that you had in school or anything?
Oh no! I stood on. This was second grade, so I was 7. So we have these benches, the school bench, the benches for lunch, near the tables. I stood on one of them and it fell, and I hit my head on a nail, and so I cut open my head, bleeding everywhere. I had to get staples on my head. That was the worst thing that ever happened in school, but it's technically better than breaking an arm because that was like you just get staples on your head. And then you can still do things. You just have to make sure not to get your head hit again. Like it's like breaking your leg or arm, really, but more blood.
Oh my goodness. I hope no one listening to the podcast is particularly squeamish, because I'm like, you're saying these things and I get a shiver up my spine. That's awful.
Yeah, and what's funny is that, like, I'm squeamish about things when I actually see them, but not when I talk about them.
Yeah.
I saw like just a dead cat while I was walking, and that ruined my week, man. That was the worst thing I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah, no, I feel that, like, if I'm walking and there's like even like a dead bird on the road, and I mean, cat's way worse, but like if I see a dead bird on the road, which is super common,
yeah,
I just like jump. I get like a,
yeah.
What's that? Why is that there? I just shouldn't be there. I hate getting surprised by that, because it's just morbid, and it's right there. Why is it there?
Yeah, I guess I'm desensitized with the dead bird thing, but when it's a mammal, I guess you're just more attached to it, I guess. Also, especially if it's a domesticated animal like a cat, it's like, no, that's like seeing a dead human almost.
It's a friend one. Yeah, I see what you're saying.
And I've never seen a dead human before, so it's like, that was like the closest I've ever gotten to that, and I never want to see anything dead ever again.
No.
It was also mangled, because I mean, how else would a cat die, I guess, in the middle of a road?
Sure.
Yeah, that was not fun. Why, have you ever seen anything worse than a dead bird?
But it wasn't worse, but like I saw my granny after she had passed away, because it wasn't like an open casket or anything like that. It was a weird one, actually. I was at home, and she was ill, and she was getting home. This, I promise, by the way, for anyone listening, I will get away from this topic as quickly as I get into it. So it's not that bad. But it was just a case of, she's very, very old, and it was her time, and she had family with her, and it was loving, and she was in her own home, and she was just kind of, I phoned Mum just to be like, hey, how's things going? Are you all right? And I knew she was over at Granny and Grandpa's. And she said, yeah. And there was something in the voice that I thought, I'm going to go for a cycle, because I used to do that all the time. I used to cycle around town with, like, pretty aimlessly, just like, I'm just going to go for a cycle for like an hour. I was like, I'll cycle and I'll swing by and just see if everything's okay. And as it happened, I cycled by, and they said, well, actually, Granny's just passed away. Do you want to come in? And so I kind of went into the room and, held her hand, gave her a kiss on the forehead, and sort of that was nice. It was a nice thing. It wasn't a bad thing. I'm very grateful for having that experience. It was like a very private family goodbye, so yeah, there was kind of that.
With those kind of things, closure is like the number one thing you want.
Yeah, it was. So that wasn't like it's worse than a bird or a cat in that it's a person, but it wasn't worse in that it was actually not a positive emotion, but like in retrospect, a really nice. Yeah, it didn't trouble. Whereas I think, like, if I saw like a really mangled cat, that would ruin my week. That would ruin my week too, I think. But I don't think I've seen anything worse than that. Whoa, this podcast has gone places. Stupid Makuhita.
Let's go back to Makuhita.
Let's go back. I want to go back. Oh my goodness.
What's funny is that, like, there are a lot of Pokemon that you just like. Is Makuhita an example of a Pokemon that you rarely think about?
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, what is it about those kind of Pokemon? What makes a Pokemon not bad, but just like you barely think about it? Not talking about like bad Pokemon like Seeking, or I mean, I don't know if Seeking's bad to you, but like Pokemon that are below average in terms of design.
Yeah, there definitely are some forgettable ones.
But ones that aren't below average, ones that are just right in the middle.
Like, you'll have to come back to me on that. Sorry, my head's still in the last topic a little bit. I feel like we should acknowledge, just because that's quite a heavy thing for the audience, we should maybe just acknowledge that, yes, we did just talk about that. We are going to go back to Pokemon now. Everyone take a breath. You're all very loved. I think, I don't know. Makuhita, forgettable Pokemon, kind of average. There are definitely some that, like, I'll be working on a video and I'll be like, yeah, that Pokemon exists. Why haven't I thought about you in like months?
It's odd because, like, for my job, our job, I have to look at every Pokemon at least once a month, because let's say I'm making a video where I need to look at every Pokemon to find the Pokemon that I need for the video, or let's say I'm making a list or just talking about, I don't know, Pokemon that are constantly in pain. Like, I'll have to look through every Pokemon,
Yeah.
I'll skim through the ones that I just don't care about.
I'm going to have a quick look at like an image of every Pokemon and just see who jumps to mind as like oh yeah, never thinking about them.
It's funny. I'll look at Birdkeeper Toby's Tree of Life poster.
Well, you should get one of those if you haven't already. I think like Mienshao, they jump to mind as Pokemon I don't really think about much.
I had to think about them recently because I had made a Pokemon that looks like it and I used it as reference. But Mienfoo, it's like, they're not bad Pokemon at all. I'd say they're slightly above average, but it's like they have not been significant in the franchise at all. Unless
maybe to
wait,
a
Marshall
lesser
probably has
to a lesser extent, like Granbull. Like Granbull's a great Pokemon. I think Granbull's a fantastic Pokemon, but I just don't think about it ever.
Well, that's the difference. So it's like, because Granbull is a below average Pokemon to me, I do think about it. Like, it's a Pokemon that I do not like. So it's like,
Oh, interesting. What don't you like about Granbull?
so a bunch of the Pokemon that I dislike are usually ones that I literally just, when I look at them, I feel uncomfortable in some way. It's not like Pokemon that I deem as, nah, that's a below average Pokemon based on the concept and design. It's more like, nah, I don't feel fun. It's not fun looking at this Pokemon, for me at least. So I don't like it. So yeah, Granbull, like, the teeth are disgusting to me. And it's like, why are the teeth under the skin? Like, it's skin teeth?
I see what you mean. Yeah. No, that makes sense. I think if we were pre-Legends Arceus, I would have said, like, Mothim. But Mothim has been, like, in Legends Arceus, is just everywhere. And it's, like, impossible to ignore.
There's no definitive answer for these forgettable Pokemon, because you said Granbull. and I think about how much I hate it every day.
Every day you look in the mirror and you see in the bottom corner you got a little sticker of a Granbull that you look at yourself in the mirror. Come on, Ron, today's the day. Don't be like. And you look down. Ugh, Granbull.
At least I'm not a Granbull.
At least I'm not Granbull, you know.
That would be a terrible existence. It's finally time for the final segment.
Cool.
So the final segment, again, is usually we just come up with some kind of either list of our favorite stuff or some kind of game or some kind of behind-the-scenes stuff. Since in the first episode we talked about our favorite shows, I think it makes sense to talk about our favorite movies now. The ones that, again, either define our lives or have had a significant effect on how we look at things.
Yeah.
How about you go first this time? I went first last time. So your fifth favorite movie or whatever is the bottom one.
And I have actually ordered these. So I got the thing is I got an A option and I got a B option because I got a fifth favorite movie, but I like it for all the same reasons that I like some of the other movies on the list. But there is something that's sort of like more of an honorable mention that I think I want to address, which is basically the entire MCU, because I don't think it's fair. Even though I have preferences in that, I really like Spider-Man: Homecoming. You know, I love Endgame and Infinity War, but the thing is, like, it's just a really long show.
Yeah,
it's not.
That's how you should look at this. By the way,
I don't know that I could take a piece out of it. Like the pieces that I love the most about it are not devoid from their relationship to other films in that, so I don't know that I can say these are like, you know, but like, has anything ever beat Endgame, all of the characters lining up in the portal sequence? Like, no, of course not. That's a cinematic event as the result of 10 years of build up. So I don't know how I compare it to other films. So, but I kind of wanted to say that first because I figured we might end up talking about the MCU.
Yeah, and the MCU film is in my top 5. And again, also, I have A's and B's and like multiple in one spot.
Is it later down the line your MCU movie?
No, I mean we can talk about it now. Like, but like,
go for it.
It's like my second. It was second on my list. Would be Infinity War and Endgame together.
Yeah, at
least as an experience. Endgame definitely the best cinematic experience I have ever had, and that anybody can have.
Same.
And I think Infinity War is slightly better as a movie.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
But they're same tier. Definitely. No MCU movie can top that, at least for me. Although Captain America: Winter Soldier and maybe even Civil War, those, I remember watching Winter Soldier and be like, whoa, this is not just a good Marvel movie. This is like the first time
it's a good movie.
This is a great movie.
So about a year ago, me and Phoebe did a rewatch of everything MCU and like all of the extended bits, so like Venom and like all of that. We watched everything we possibly could, and we like did a full-on ranking list. And what I found interesting is that like my favorite MCU movies are like a couple of the solo ones, so like the first Iron Man movie and Spider-Man: Homecoming. I just think it's brilliant.
Yeah,
but that's because Spidey's my favorite, right? But then I don't think they're better films than Winter Soldier, which I think is probably the best MCU movie, but then there's Endgame and Infinity War, and like it's all about those. So like, how do you? I find ranking those films fun to do, but also really hard to do because you're separating them as films to them as events to your personal favorites. Like my personal favorite is probably the Spider-Man: Homecoming or maybe Iron Man 1, but
really
I acknowledge that there are better films in the MCU than those films. They're just maybe like they're the ones that I watch and go, oh, these are fun, and I'm a little child watching them.
Wait, does that mean you enjoyed Homecoming more than No Way Home?
I still don't know. I don't know, because No Way Home, I immediately I whipped out the list and put at the very top No Way Home ? And I need to watch it like 5 more times before I make that distinction.
Here's the difference. So it's like everybody can have different opinions on whether or not MCU movies are good films.
Yeah.
But the literal fact is that you and me are both huge Marvel fans, right?
Yeah.
And that we had probably one of the best experiences we ever had watching, for example, Endgame. If another film can't do that, it's like, obviously I'm going to remember Endgame forever. And it's going to be in my top 5. I'm not saying it's critically, it's like it should be the standard for film, but it should definitely be the standard for cinema experience, maybe. Like
some kind of entertainment. The people, I know there was that famous Scorsese quote where he's like, these things aren't cinema. Yeah. And I understand what he's trying to say. I completely disagree, though.
What's funny is that he wasn't even talking about Marvel movies. He was talking about superhero movies in general.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Which is,
and even with that, I disagree, because there are some fantastic superhero movies. Like, I've got some on my list.
Yeah, there's a difference. If you're going to watch a film for entertainment, there's literally no shame in watching a Marvel movie.
I think there is absolutely a place, as there is with different genres of film, like horror or comedy, there is absolutely a place for, if you want to go and dissect the craft of filmmaking, there's going to be shows and films like Arcane that are out there and ready to be watched and dissected. Yeah. But if you want to go and you just want to see dinosaurs tear each other apart, well, Jurassic World is right here. And that's fine too.
Here's where I'm torn, though. It's like, I don't watch Marvel movies for the action stuff. That's what's funny. I watch because I actually enjoy the characters and I want to see either the development, or I love just superpowers in general. I don't need to see super explosions. I actually don't like, for example, Iron Man 3. Iron Man 3 is underrated, I think. I fell asleep during the action sequence, during like the climax. Because it was, at least to me, it was just a lot of explosions. I also didn't care about the villain as much. But like, even though I really do care about Tony Stark, I'm a big fan of Iron Man and Tony Stark. But for example, I'm a huge, Homecoming I love, even though, half of it, the majority of it isn't like huge explosions or anything. So it's like, no, I just really like characters. This is like watching a series. I think that's the way you should watch Marvel movies.
I feel you, but you got to go back and watch that Iron Man 3 ending.
I did. I obviously didn't. I didn't sleep
good.
The second time I watched it.
Good. Okay.
Obviously enjoyed the context even more. But it's like, it's just a fact that I don't go to these movies to watch the action. I go to watch more the fiction, the science fiction, I guess, because I'm a fan of that, and all the creative ways that they come up with the stories, or they deal with their situations and stuff. I think Marvel shouldn't be disparaged for being like a TV series, because it should be praised for being this cool medium, or this new medium that's like between movie and TV, basically, where it's like,
and some episodes are worse than others, but some episodes are fantastic, and the plot overall is like really fun to watch.
Maybe one episode we'll talk about like our favorite. Well, that would be a good third segment topic, which is
in a future thing. We should totally do that.
Ranking our favorite MCU films.
This blends me on. If it's okay with you, I'll take the next one, because it blends in perfectly with this, which is The Dark Knight.
It's my 6th favorite movie, I guess. So I didn't put it on my list, but we can definitely talk about it. Dark Knight was my favorite superhero film before like the crazy awesome like MCU movies like Endgame and stuff like that.
Yeah, I feel that. But again, I find them hard to compare against each other, because they're so different.
Dark Knight, way better plot than any MCU film ever. Like Dark Knight is just an amazing movie. It's not even, you don't even have to think of it as a superhero movie. That's like, even my father enjoys Dark Knight to the max,
It's literally so captivating, and it's got such an incredible start, like the opening sequence, the bank heist at the beginning.
Oof.
And then that's just it. I'm in, right? You watch it, and I'm just like, it's a long movie, but that time just flies by every time, and it bookends itself really well as well, because I watched this brilliant video by a YouTuber called Lessons from the lessons from the screenplay, who I think you'd really enjoy if you don't know. They do breakdowns of various scenes and various things, and they're talking about why the Joker's the perfect villain for Batman, wouldn't work in maybe other scenarios, but why this film works. And they were talking about the ending, which is about the decision on the boats to whether these two boats are going to blow up each other, and if they don't do it in time, then maybe they'll both be blown up. And what was wonderful about that is they were saying, when we go to a superhero movie, we all know there's got to be a sequel because it's a franchise and that's what they do. But in this instance, for this gritty, Dark Knight film, there's a world where they could have ended it with the Joker winning the heart of Gotham by having the boats both blow up. That could have been the ending to The Dark Knight. And
could have been like the Empire Strikes Back kind of ending.
Exactly what he says in the video. And I just think that tension feels so real. The stakes are real. It doesn't matter if Batman can beat Joker in a fist fight. The stakes are very much there and very much possible.
The ideals of all these characters. Who's going to break? For example, you see Harvey Dent's, his ideals broke like because of his experience. So it's like you don't want Batman to just become a murderer, for example, or just to throw out his ideals because he's a symbol. I think a lot of the heart of that whole franchise is done the best in The Dark Knight. They just really understood the dynamic between the Batman and the Joker in that one.
Yeah.
Ever since then, I always like imagining, what would be how would you redesign these characters and make them more realistic? Even though I definitely prefer, the more animated versions and stuff like that. But it's just fun having that alternative where it's like, I want to see that done well too.
I have heard the criticism, and I kind of agree with it, that as a result of films like The Dark Knight, the DC franchise felt the need to continue to be really gritty and dark.
Yeah.
And I think they missed the point, is that The Dark Knight's a good movie because it's a good movie, not because it's gritty and dark. That's an element of it.
Have you seen The Suicide Squad?
Yeah, so like the latest one's really good, but the old one was really bad.
So that's exactly how you make a DC movie. The new Suicide Squad, very campy, but I love the colors. The colors are actually really well done. The color grading in that film, they look like super villains. They actually look like comic characters because the colors were graded in a way that made them colorful. The costumes were very goofy, but those were the characters. They fit the characters very well.
Yeah,
it was a comedy film. What other DC film is a comedy film?
Only one other, which is the only other one I enjoyed, which was Shazam.
Oh yeah, because Shazam is another way you do it. So they're learning. It's just that it doesn't have a cohesive feel. Like it's not like I guess actually the Shazam and Suicide Squad feel like they're in the same universe. I mean they are.
Yeah, I could see that.
So they're learning somehow, I guess. Yeah. I don't know. It's just...
Although, and I know we're getting a little off. This is becoming the DC podcast here, but like Joker, the standalone film, definitely not a comedy, maybe a dark comedy, but also really good.
Yeah, the point is just make a good film. I don't care. Who cares what style it is? Just make a good film. There are rules in terms of how you make a good film. We've had hundreds of years of cinema. Learn from it. I get it's very hard to make a film. There are a lot of moving pieces. The only thing to learn is just if you make a good film, people will like it. If you don't, they won't. Yeah. But okay, the only other superhero movie that is on my list, other than MCU and DC and stuff, that is actually in my top 5, and I think is generally a movie that is top 5 worthy, is The Incredibles.
Oh, good show. Yes, good shout.
The Incredibles is literally just a well-made film in every single aspect. Like the acting, the scenarios and like the way the characters act, they act like normal characters. It feels like it could have been live action, but like obviously it looks way better because it's animated. The art direction's amazing. I love the style, like this like 50s kind of style. I love the relationships between the characters and their growth. The character development is amazing in that. That's like a well done character development for characters. I love the sequences. The action is really good. I love the power. Again, I'm a huge fan of just powers. And the powers were amazingly executed in that movie. Everybody had a chance to shine and do something creative with their powers. The antagonist is one of the best villains. Yeah. Everybody understands his plan. You understand his goal. You understand his motivation.
Just another example of people feeling real. Like there's the sequence. I don't know why my brain always goes there, but it's the sequence where the mum, Mrs. Incredible, I forget her name. What's her name? The mum. The mum.
Yeah, Mrs. Incredible. But what's
Mrs. Incredible's flex lady? It's
a very like white
common
lady
name, I know. Helen Parr,
Helen
right?
Parr,
Helen says she's like that. She discovers that Vi and Dash are on the plane,
Yeah.
and then the missiles are coming into the plane, and it's this weird, incredible shift where it doesn't like go, hey, this is a kid's film, even though it is. It's very much just like your lives are in danger, and you see it and you feel it, and it's like she's just doing her best as a mum to save her kid's life, and it's like it's this really real moment of like emotion in the film that stands out, and I don't know why that moment stands out so much, but it really does. As like, oh man, yeah, this film is like, it's not just animated kids film.
The dialogue is just it feels realistic. I mean, Brad Bird is really good at that, and I think, like, for example, the scenes that always stand out to me are just the ones where they act like normal people and you see they're like them struggling just to live. For example, like when Mr. Incredible is confined and he grabs, what's her name, like the Mirage, is that her name?
Yeah.
He grabs her and like he threatens to kill her in front of Syndrome, and it's like that. The hero threatening to kill someone in like a film, and obviously you can see that he doesn't want to do it, and like he doesn't do it, and it's like that's so realistic. Or like just the protagonists like having a fight, like Mr. and Mrs. Incredible having just marriage problems, and it's very realistic dialogue. It is not kids movie dialogue. It just literally sounds like two people having an actual fight.
That's it.
So yeah, those are my favorite stuff in the film, and also I really do like the art direction. Even as a kid, I just, from the beginning, that was one of the first films where I remembered the style of the film. Like, because in the credits, I think they show like maybe the concept art or whatever, or just like the style of the concept art. You should look at the concept art of The Incredibles. It's like,
there's every chance I'm watching The Incredibles after this now. Like just talking about it, I'm like, it's been way too long since I watched The
incredibly
Incredibles.
rewatchable.
Ha! Zing!
Oh, those are my favorite films. All my films are films that you can watch a billion times. I mean, I feel like that's with everybody. Everybody's favorite films they can watch a billion times. But let me actually talk about my fifth favorite film. Again, these are all in the same tier. Scott Pilgrim.
I knew you were going to say it, so I didn't put it on my list.
Really?
I didn't know you were going to say it, but I suspected you might.
So it is the film that best demonstrates visual comedy, the framing, amazing directing. That is how you visual comedy, like where it's funny because of how it is framed in the on screen, how the characters move, how the direction, how the camera moves. You have to show that in film class.
So this is well, it's all of them. It's Scott Pilgrim. It's the other Edgar Wright films. Drive. It's
every Edgar
Baby
Wright
Driver. Hot Fuzz, Shaun of the Dead. All of them, right? The thing that they do so well, and we were talking about this with Arcane, is when a bit of media embraces the medium that it's in the way that Arcane does with animation and editing. In this sense, you couldn't have Scott Pilgrim versus the World, the stage play. It just wouldn't work.
Yeah,
the
definitely.
editing, the transitions, the text on screen, the cutaways, these things are part of the media itself. And when you can root yourself in the medium like that, it not only shows just creativity from the filmmakers, but it's fun. It's fun to watch.
100%. And it's like when people criticize, I guess, Scott Pilgrim, it's always just maybe the characters. But it's like I'm not watching, even though I actually am enjoying the characters. Like Scott Pilgrim himself isn't an idol. Like, isn't someone you should worship. Sure. But like, no, I'm there for the actual filmmaking. That's why we watch it a billion times, because I'm always just enjoying the art itself, and the acting is really good too. They took advantage of the medium more than any other film I've ever seen. They did everything that they could with film and editing and directing. I can't think of another film where it's like every other film, like even the best ones, it's like there is probably something that they didn't take advantage of. Like maybe the editing wasn't the best editing you've ever seen. It's definitely like an Academy Award winning directing or visual effects or something, but maybe the editing or maybe the acting wasn't the best acting in the world. But no, other than the acting, I think Scott Pilgrim, in terms of filmmaking, did everything above average.
Yeah. No, I mean, I agree. It was so nearly on my list, and I have a lot of nostalgic attachment to it, and I don't know if I've told you that. You probably know. I did film at uni. That was my degree in film production, and so like films like Scott Pilgrim were like there was a certain sort of subsection of the class, myself included, where it was like films like that. It's like, we just want to analyze and break down and watch the behind the scenes or anything to do with something like that, because it's like, this is just this is just different.
Sorry, if you haven't watched Scott Pilgrim, for anybody, it's basically, imagine taking a comic book and actually turning it into film, and it isn't cringe. To all the Zoomers, it's not cringe.
Yeah, and if you want, again, like a more subtle introduction to that kind of thing, like, I do think Shaun of the Dead and Hot Fuzz do very similar stuff and are both equally excellent. Honestly, I could flip them in and out of this top list easily enough. Like, they're all brilliant. And
I think what's funny is that all the films that we brought up, they're all based on comic books. Every single one we brought up. And we probably are exaggerating in terms of like how awesome these films are. It's not like there are definitely like 100 films that could be better in terms of in terms of acting, in terms of story and screenplay, or in terms of directing. I just love the boundaries that were pushed in those films, whether it be visual effects in, let's say, Endgame and Infinity War, or again, directing in Scott Pilgrim, or story in Dark Knight. They excelled at one thing really well, and it made the experience very fun to watch and unique. Do you have any other films that aren't superheroes on your list?
Yeah, actually, I mean, my next one is a complete contrast to all of this, which is When Harry Met Sally. Have you watched When Harry Met Sally?
No, I haven't. Obviously, there's a famous scene in that film, but like, that I haven't seen. I would definitely enjoy it, especially now that you've recommended it. I feel like, okay, I have to watch it already.
I mean, it's the third favorite film, apparently, according to what I've written. And again, all of these favorite films, they merge and change and evolve over time. But When Harry Met Sally's been on this list probably since I first watched it in 2016, and I'm not a rom-com person. I don't particularly like rom-coms. I dislike them. I just don't go out of my way to watch them. And I watched When Harry Met Sally, and it's a film tackling the question: can men and women just be friends? Can you? And that's sort of the core of it. And Lessons from the Screenplay also did a video about that. And whereas rom-coms take a very traditional format, the old ones anyway, very traditional boy meets girl, they don't get along, they're forced due to exterior things to kind of be in contact with each other, they realize there's a flirtation, they want to be together, but there's some other exterior force, maybe a job, a parent, whatever, that means they can't be together, and we're rooting them to be together all along. When Harry Met Sally takes a very different approach. It says boy meets girl, they don't like each other very much, and they say goodbye to each other by the end of the first scene. And there are... I don't want to spoil too much about the film because you haven't seen it, but they obviously, because the whole film is about these two people, they re-interact across periods of time. And with that, there invites a level of comparison between all the different times in which we meet them, but also them as two friends in relation to their friends who are all in relationships. It's really interesting to see the dynamics and, well, shouldn't they be in a relationship? Why aren't they in a relationship? What's that about? Maybe they will be in a relationship. How's this going to go? And it's really interesting. It's about human interaction at its finest, and I think it is one of the most beautifully written films. And if tomorrow, if any friend of mine said, "Do you want to watch When Harry Met Sally?" I literally would be so excited. I'd be like, "Yes, I do." Any day.
If we lived next to each other, I would definitely come by and watch it with you right now. Actually, tonight.
We could watch it over Discord sometime, mate. I'd be well up for it.
Because we're recording this on a Thursday, and Thursday nights and Sunday nights are usually when I watch a film, if I do watch a film. So I never know, I may watch it tonight. Although I'm trying to think if there are other films that I needed to watch, because we're recording after like Oscar season, so I may have to watch some films that were nominated or won.
Is there anything on your list that kind of hits that Oscar-worthy?
The next two films are Oscar-worthy.
Okay.
They're technically tied for first. A Silent Voice. Have you ever heard of A Silent Voice?
I've never even heard of it, so you're going to have to paint me the picture.
It's a Japanese animated film.
Okay.
It basically came out the same year as Your Name. Have you ever heard of Your Name?
I've heard of it, but I haven't seen it.
Your Name was a phenomenon. One of the highest grossing films in Japan. It was it's a beautiful film, one of the best looking films. Animation is gorgeous. Story is a lot of twists and turns. Very fun story, but it overshadowed A Silent Voice, which people think is slightly better in terms of like both are like 95% on Rotten Tomato, maybe even 100.
Sure.
Both are like top tier films. Silent Voice is just better, maybe story and characters, I guess. So A Silent Voice is one of those films. I'll talk about the plot, but first I want to talk about the feeling that had while watching it. One of those films where literally the entire runtime of the film, I was on the brink of crying. I was on the brink of I had that like feeling in my throat before you want to cry. Well, usually while you're watching a film, maybe there's a few scenes that you want to cry and you actually do cry. This was a film where no, throughout the entire movie, I was on the verge of tears because I really connected with the protagonist who has social anxiety disorder. And it's probably the most realistic depiction, at least based on my experience, of social anxiety. Because usually other films like Punch Drunk Love, where characters supposedly have social anxiety disorder, are just like they're crazy. They don't have social anxiety. They're just psychotic, or either they're agoraphobic, where they literally cannot be outside at all. Well, this person, no, he acted like a normal person, but the way he acted around people was exactly how I act sometimes around people. So here's what the plot is, though. It's basically the protagonist in elementary school severely bullied this deaf girl.
Okay.
And the film is basically him reuniting with her in high school. And basically trying to make amends. And basically, because of his experience in middle school, he basically became shunned and ostracized and developed social anxiety disorder. And it's basically, what happens once he actually meets up with this girl once again after not seeing her for 10 years or whatever. And how does she deal with the trauma of, of what happened to her in the past or what happened to her, in the present, and how does he deal with, desperately wanting to make amends, but everything not going wrong, but things going against that, and trying to genuinely show, his feelings when he literally has social anxiety disorder. And again, it's also animated, so it looks amazing. It's so pretty. It's one of those films. Again, there's a whole sub-dub debate, but I think a lot of people agree that the dub is worthy too, because they actually cast a deaf girl as the deaf girl, as Shoko, and she does an amazing job. It makes it way more realistic. While in the Japanese version, I don't think she's deaf, but I may be wrong. There's a mechanic that they do that shows this guy's social anxiety, which is when you're seeing the film through his perspective, everybody's face is covered in an X because he's not looking at their eye, he's not looking at their face.
Okay.
And it's it makes sense.
You've sold it. You've sold it. I want to watch it.
They
Silent
do a really
Voice.
good job with that mechanic.
Yeah.
It's still an anime, so there's some anime tropes, I think, but that's more just because it's just Japanese, so there's a lot of just Japanese things that Americans would be confused about for a second, what does that joke mean? I don't understand that. But no, it's really well done. It's funny, it's heartwarming. There were scenes that actually did make me cry. But it's a film that I don't want to rewatch because it's so sad. In terms of it just makes me want to cry the entire time. But no, it has a satisfying ending, so don't worry about that. But yeah, I just prefer rewatching it while watching reactions of other. I've watched people react to it instead of me sitting down and having to go through that again.
Well, hopefully I'll bring a reaction to you in the next couple of weeks. Hopefully, you've sold it. It just sounds fascinating. It's such a good concept. Bully tries to reunite with and make amends to the person that they bullied is such an instant formula for drama and chemistry that wow, I want to see how that goes.
Yeah, and it goes unexpected. There's not a lot of tropes in terms of how the story goes. But yeah, so A Silent Voice for anybody who hasn't watched it and is a fan of. If you've watched Your Name, people always say watch A Silent Voice right after, and a lot of people have watched Your Name. I'm assuming in our audience.
Oh yes, I would have thought so.
All right, so I have one more film, but do you have any other films?
Well, I got two more. I'm going to glaze over the second one, though, because it's kind of an odd thing, is Tenacious D and The Pick of Destiny.
I have seen a lot of clips from that on YouTube.
It's kind of an odd one because it's not critically acclaimed. In fact, I don't even know if as a movie it's good, But
I didn't even know it was a movie until recently.
It is a movie.
I thought it was a show or like a special.
Well, this is the wonderful thing about it. So it's Jack Black and Carl Gass, who are obviously the band Tenacious D. I love Jack Black. He's my favorite celebrity probably ever of all time. And
Natural born entertainer.
Yeah, I think he's great. And Tenacious D is like... Jack Black puts his heart into a lot of projects, like you can see with Jablinski Games, where it's just like, this is just him having fun. And
one of my favorite like clips to rewatch, like 6-second meme, is him dancing to and singing the Five Nights and Freddy song on Jablinski. Have you ever seen that?
Yeah, I have.
It's just him, Five Nights at Freddy's.
Yeah,
that's where I want to be.
He oozes an organic funness, and Tenacious D and the Pick of Destiny strikes me as a movie that there's no other way to describe it. It's the same kind of content, just with a higher budget, that I would have made when I was 12 on YouTube with my friends, you know, or not 12, but like 14 with my friends, because it's just friends making stuff together.
Sure.
And it's for that reason that I love it so much. It's not a critically good film, and it never will be, and it's not even necessarily structurally a good film, but it's fun. And when you can... and not even fun in a dumb explosions kind of way. It's when you get who these people are and what they're about, and that this is just two best mates making a thing together.
Yeah,
there's something to be said for that. That it has a very special place in my heart. You know,
especially when it's two famous people doing that. You know,
yeah.
It's like that's when you know these are genuine people that just want to make art. And
yeah.
like Jack Black, again, I love artists who are famous in multiple mediums, like for example, as a musician, as an actor, as a comedian. Jack Black is an example of that. Childish Gambino is an example of that.
Yeah.
Donald Glover. So yeah, I always respect those kind of people because they're just artists, pure artists.
Hugely. But I won't spend too long on that. Do you want to do your number one, or shall I do my number one? What do you want to go for?
Whose number one is? We'll end on the number one that's the happier film. Do you think yours is a happier film?
No, mine's not a happy film.
Okay, whatever. Mine isn't. I mean, the ending is really good. Everybody loves the ending.
Yeah, well, maybe we've got the same film.
Maybe
I don't know.
My favorite film of all time is The Shawshank Redemption.
Oh, brilliant movie! Yeah, fantastic movie.
I think that is just the movie. I think I can watch a billion times. I already have. I love films that you can just catch on TV from the middle and rewatch.
Yeah.
Because like I love films that are like segmented into like times of a person's life, like The Godfather, like Forrest Gump. Those are my favorite types of films. So like The Godfather and Forrest Gump are definitely, they could be here. Like everybody's, you know, in everybody's top 20 or something. But like
Wolf of Wall Street does that.
Oh yeah,
same kind of deal. Exactly, like it, same kind of reason. But actually,
Goodfellas.
Shawshank and Wolf of Wall Street, if I'm not mistaken, are based on true stories, right? I think Shawshank is right.
Redemption is not a true story. No, that's based.
Is
on
it not based on a true story?
Stephen King novel.
My bad. But there you go. Okay. Well, yeah. No, but I mean, Shawshank's fantastic. Shawshank's an amazing film.
I mean, it's already, everybody knows what it is, but if you haven't, guy goes to prison. What happens in prison? And it's everything that you can think of happens that you know, I mean, maybe the tropes come from Shawshank Redemption, I don't know, but like it's not that tropey where it's like, oh, this obvious thing that always happens in prison happens, but it's like, nah, it's done in a tasteful way, and like a way that actually advances the plot and everything, that like you fall in love with the protagonist and the dude-antagonist, the secondary character, Morgan Freeman's character, Red.
Yeah.
One of the best film characters of all time. It's just an amazing screenplay. It's the best films are the ones where literally the screenplay is just amazing and the actors do a good job acting it.
The wonderful thing that they do in that is that the Andy Dufresne is in prison for the murder of his ex-wife, and you root for him even though you don't know. Didn't he? You just know why he's in prison. And I think that's whether he actually did it or not is maybe left up to interpretation on purpose, or maybe it's just simply not the point. Is like whether he did it or not isn't the point of the film. The point is this journey, which is just brilliant. It's
probably the most human depiction of like prison too, because they're not too like violent. It's not like the most violent film ever, but there's violence. It's not the opposite where it's all happy prison people having fun. No, it's literally right in the middle where it's like it's probably what prison is like, actually, honestly.
Yeah.
But there's hope, and there's, I think,
Hope is what it's about, really,
Yeah, I
isn't
guess,
it? That's the word that would describe it, I think. Hope.
It's hard to describe because it really is just such an average story or plot, but it's just executed so well and directed so well. Oh, everything is just satisfying. The outcome of everything that happens.
Yeah.
One of the most is just that's why it's the number one for me. It's just everything that I wanted to happen kind of happened.
Just excellent film. Again, another one I could do with rewatching sometime soon.
I don't need to praise it because again it was nominated for Oscars. I think Forrest Gump beat it. Forrest Gump, I think it was 1994 when this came out, when a lot of other famous films came out and overshadowed it. So Shawshank Redemption didn't do well, but it became a cult classic, I think.
Well, my number one on the list is the Steve Jobs movie with Michael Fassbender.
Oh,
you seen it?
I haven't seen it because I mean I'm gonna obviously. I haven't seen it because it came out like right after the bad Steve Jobs movie. And I was just,
okay.
I was like, do I watch any Steve Jobs movie? Like, I guess apparently Steve Jobs is not a good movie, but then in the end, it is a good movie. When that came out, I was confused. Is this the same movie as the other Steve Jobs movie?
Right.
But, like, no, that is apparently the Steve Jobs movie to watch. And
I've not seen the other one. And it's interesting because I don't even know if this is my favorite film. It's just when I wrote this list out, it was the first thing I put on paper. So I instinctually want to say that it is. And it's a film that is covering the life of Steve Jobs in 3 time periods. There's the launch of the Mac.
Nice.
There's the launch of another product in the middle. And then there's the launch of like the new Mac in the kind of more modern era in like the 80s or 90s or something. But and so it's these 3 product launches, 3 very distinct acts, and you're seeing Steve Jobs about sort of, I don't know, 8 to 10 years apart through these 3 segments. You learn about his relationships to Steve Wozniak, his relationship to the CEO of Michael Sully, I think his name is. No, that's Monsters Inc. Sully, who's the CEO of Pepsi, who becomes the CEO of Apple briefly. You learn about the story of him getting ousted from Apple before his return to Apple. He's not a particularly nice man,
No.
and maybe it plays a little too hard into the trope that in order to be a genius, you're supposed to be an asshole. Though Steve Wozniak, who's played by Seth Rogen, does a wonderful job of demonstrating that that's not the case.
Yeah, apparently he's an amazing guy.
It's really left up to you whether you even like Steve Jobs at the end of the movie, but it's this lovely film that kind of like when Harry Met Sally invites comparison between these 3 acts and these 3 time periods. A lot of things play out the same, but a little bit different, and it's just working out, has the character grown? Have they not grown? And all of our characters, because the supporting cast is also absolutely fantastic. One of my favorite characters in it is Steve Jobs' assistant, whose name unfortunately escapes me, but she is the most
what's her name? Kate Winslet
rich
plays her? Is she
it might be Kate Winslet, actually. Yeah, it might well be.
I just remember seeing a
Wonderful
trailer.
performance. You learn about Steve Jobs' daughter and his relationship to the lady who has this daughter, and seeing her grow up in the shadow of kind of, not the shadow of her father, but like knowing her father is Steve Jobs. And
Yeah.
it's weird because it's talking about a real person, but that's also, I guess, part of it. And I also know from interviews afterwards that it's very exaggerated and reformed to make it fit the narrative, but
I'm a huge fan
really
of biopics. I'm a huge fan of those.
Yeah.
So
incredible score as well. Incredible score.
I'm this week either Steve Jobs or When Harry Met Sally. I'm going to watch.
Oh, they're both great. Watch When Harry Met Sally.
Yeah, Steve Jobs is more accessible, but When Harry Met Sally is just even more classic, and like I need to finally see that film. You know.
Yeah.
And it's probably happier.
I think you'd enjoy it. I think you'd enjoy it a lot, When Harry Met Sally. I don't know how much you'd enjoy Steve Jobs. I think you'd like it.
No, I would definitely enjoy Steve Jobs. I know.
When Harry Met Sally, yeah.
You don't have to watch all the films that we suggested. That was just us. I mean, we definitely have a bias towards superhero movies, but like our favorite films, like we enjoy normal films.
Range, yeah.
There's some kind of range. I like when people do things that you can't do in real life in films. Because that's the point. Sometimes, you want to.
Oh yeah.
That's it, really. I mean, every film, Shawshank Redemption, you think, oh, that's realistic. Nobody can do what Andy Dufresne did at the end. That's what's so cool. It's like that's a hero right there. That's pretty cool. I like fiction. We like fiction, and that's why I did this segment, because that's probably our relationship. We enjoy each other because we enjoy talking about fiction.
Yeah. Yeah.
But also because you're a nice guy.
Yeah. That too. Also, you should take our suggestions, because I took your suggestion for Arcane,
Really?
and I've had just the best week.
And thank you guys for watching. I mean, I'm assuming there isn't anything else you want to say, Toby, right?
No. It's been a long show. It's been a good one, though.
Slightly above average. But I guess now you guys know the range. I hope you enjoyed the first one. If you haven't, go watch it. Go watch the first episode. Because, I mean, what's funny is that I always watch podcasts from the second episode. I don't know why I do that.
It's really common, but we're going to put these out. I think at roughly the same time as like the first and second one going out together.
The plan is to release the first 3 episodes at the same time right now.
So hopefully, if you're listening to this, there's 2 other episodes of you listen to, but go back and listen to the first one. It'll give you a really good idea of what it is we're going for with this, and we're looking forward to kind of evolving it going forwards.
And the 3rd episode most probably will have a guest.
Yes.
You can't suggest. Don't suggest to anybody, because by the time this episode comes up, we have already recorded the 3rd episode. But maybe suggest another one for the future. That would be...
Yes.
We're hoping to have a lot of guests. It's not just us, although, again, the majority of the episodes is... This is the Calm Mind crew. Oh, that's nice. I never even... is that what we're called?
I like that. Crew? Yeah, let's take it.
And what are the people called? What are the viewers called? We can... the Calm Minders.
Calm Minders. I don't know about that.
Calm Mind Cast. No, you're not part of this. You don't get the money.
They're just calm. Whoever they are, they're just calm.
They're calm.
Hopefully.
I'm calm. You're calm. We're all calm. And I hope you have more calm days in front of you. Thank you guys for listening. Thank you, Toby, for being here with me and talking as well.
Anytime. Thank you.
Bye.